What's going on, everybody? It's been a while since I made a video. I sold my lens and I realized I didn't have any more lenses, but we're back. Today I'm gonna try to experiment with something. I'm gonna try to build a dash out of all this. So here's the old original dashboard. It is whatever that plywood sort of thing. And I'm also gonna re-clean this up and re-veneer it so I can still use this. But it's from the parts car. Right here is some tree bark. All of this bark is ethically sourced from the floor of this forest. Yeah, simply pick it up and run out before the mosquitoes come get you. I flattened it out and I put a little bit of epoxy on it right now, and the reason being is so that it makes a little coating on the top that prevents bubbles from rising up when I pour the big slab of epoxy. So what I'm gonna try to do is basically a different version on the, you know, those epoxy glass tables where they like the river tables where they have the, like in the grooves of the wood, they kind of have a different color epoxy, like a blue. I'm gonna attempt that on this to give kind of like a terrain feel. So the tree bark will kind of be like the land, and everything in between will be like a blue river, or maybe I might go with red. I think I'm gonna go with blue just because it looks a lot nicer. I experimented a little bit with this already. I haven't sanded it down or made it look pretty, but this is basically a red river and you can kind of see through it. So I was thinking maybe even putting lights in the back, but I didn't want the gaps as big as this river one. So these gaps will be a lot smaller. Most likely half of them are going to be not really too visible because the whole it's going to have all the gauges and stuff taking most of the space of this, so you're only going to realistically see a little bit of the wood, but that much. Hopefully it looks pretty good. Right now I'm going to make the walls around this, seal it all off, and then I'm going to pour the epoxy along this, and then once it hardens in a couple days I will trace those over it and cut it all out. But basically it's a long process. The first thing I gotta do is obviously make the box around it, and then I'm gonna pour the blue epoxy into the little crevices here to make the river part of it. And because underneath is not even, a lot of it's gonna flow underneath the cardboard. I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna have to keep going over and over again. So there's gonna be like a pretty good layer of blue on everything, and then there'll be the clear epoxy on the top. Hopefully no bubbles. But I've got a little blow dryer to try to clean it up as much as I can. But let's speed through the process and see what we can do. So just an update of where I'm at right now. I've kind of got a little frame built around this right now, and I'm ready to start pouring the river part. But I know you can see there's a lot of kind of extra space I'm going to waste a lot of expensive epoxy on, but it is what it is. Basically, it's just too hard for me to cut this right now while it's on the table because it's kind of epoxy to the table. I'm gonna have to break that up later on, but I'd rather not try to break it up now and snap it in half. So it's just a hard material I'm working with. But I'm basically gonna go ahead and start pouring and we'll see what happens. Alright, so I'm gonna take these out now because I don't need them. And I'm gonna start mixing some epoxy. There's a lot of junk in there. I guess I don't know where that came from. Anyway, I'm gonna start mixing epoxy. I'm gonna start pouring it. There's some areas here that are probably gonna bubble because they don't have the pre-layer of epoxy on it. But you know, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. So the first mark is just gonna be the base, and the second one will be the activator. Some slow, chunky boy material. Should also be wearing gloves and a respirator for this. Alright, so I'm going to take a little bit of the blue powder, the dark blue that I have, and I'll just kind of sprinkle some in here. I'll start mixing. The base is like really thick, and the other stuff is going to be a little bit thinner. Just filled up a little bit of the little cracks and crevices. So now you can kind of see the blue. So I've got most of the blue poured in already, and you can kind of see how it looks. Basically, obviously I'm gonna trim these areas and make it all smooth and flush with the shape of the gauges and everything, the whole cluster. But that's basically the idea of how it's gonna look. Kind of just all broken up wood and water. And hopefully it turns out nice. On top of this, there's going to be a layer of clear just to bring it up about another 1/4 inch. And it might be a little bit too thick, so I don't know how that's going to work out. Hopefully we can get it to the right thickness. But yeah, so that's, I think it looks pretty cool. So we're gonna go ahead and let this sit for a while, and I'm gonna go over it again in a few hours with just a little bit more blue, like a darker blue, in the center pieces of the river. But for now, let's go return some empties and get some schmackos. The level of bird on my car right now is astronomical. Unacceptable. But what is acceptable is the fact that we've got 4 cases of Roners in the back here, and we got a couple of these Moosey boys. So we're gonna go ahead and get some schmackos, and we're gonna spend it on the Spitfire. So what else are we gonna do with it? So it's a little bit dry now. Dry to the touch, but not fully cured. It's been about a day. It doesn't look too bad. You can see some nice color in it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit more of the kind of the water element to it, the blue, and then I'll fill it up all the way with clear epoxy. Okay, so now we pretty much have the table all hard. There's a couple of bubbles here and there, but what I want to do is I want to take all these moldings and stuff away so I can pop the table up and take it outside to sand it. So let's, oh, this is pretty tough. Take the good old mallet. Minty. Now we can get a closer look at all this. I don't know how close I can go where it would focus. Just about there. So you can see there the bubbles. It's not the greatest, but I think I can sand these all down. And the only problem I have right now is this is protruding out over here and very much over here. So right now I don't think I'll be able to sand this whole thing perfectly flat because I'll end up digging into there. So it actually needs more epoxy. But I don't have more epoxy, so what I'm going to do is try to sand each little bubble area. I'll try to sand around these spots as much as I can, just to get rid of the bubbles, and just give this whole top layer like a little bit of a smooth texture. It kind of sank in there, it's kind of weird. But I have just a tiny little bit of epoxy left where I can coat this after I finish gouging out these holes and stuff, and hopefully it turns out okay. But this is the little epoxy thing so far. I guess what I could do is start sanding, or I could start cutting it to shape for the pieces. And the pieces I got them hiding under here. They were used to level the table, but now you can get an idea. Something like that, right up against the top, and we can go along there. You can just trace these little holes, draw it onto here, and then we should be able to cut it out. Okay, so I've gone ahead and taped down everything in place, and there's these kind of gaps here where I'm gonna have to cut, and I basically put sawzall blades just to account for the thickness that I'm gonna have to cut. This way everything is still the way it needs to be. It doesn't have to be any shorter or anything. But yeah, I wasted a lot of epoxy. I could have just made this a lot closer, but it is what it is. This is my first time doing this. You live and learn. And also, a lot of the nicer looking water is going to be cut out because I suck at measuring, and that's probably because I didn't measure at all. But you know, it is what it is, right? But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and trace this hole out. You can kind of see I did with a little Sharpie. I made it bigger, obviously, because I'm gonna sand it down smaller, and I have to do some work with the edges to make everything fit from the back side, because this is actually a lot thicker than this, and there's nothing I can do about it, because if I flatten the top, or if I plane the top, I'll chew through some of the bark that's too high, and if I plane the bottom, I get rid of the blue. So it is what it is. I'm gonna have to figure it out. Maybe I'll just make some little cutout spots where I have to sacrifice the look just so it fits in the car, but we'll see. You know, we're not there yet. Don't count your horses until they hatch from the eggs. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and remove this now. Put that aside. Oh, she doesn't want to go. It's okay. We'll just leave her up there. She's fine there. Take your Sawzall blades. Now you can go ahead and put these on the Sawzall and use them to cut this whole contraption out.